Previously, I've explored how organized faith and primitive religious values blight our lives. The argument in favor of abortion up until the baby was 1 year old, say, or 2 years old. And so if a baby was 1 year old and turned out to have some horrible, incurable disease that meant it was going to die in agony in later life, what about infanticide? Strictly morally, I can see no objection to that at all. I would be in favor of infanticide. There are two ways of looking at the world, through faith and superstition, or through the rigors of logic, observation, and evidence.
I'm a physician, I'm a scientist, I'm a geneticist, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. This pair of images that you see here frames what I want to say to you in these 18 minutes. Look at those two. They are thought-provoking in terms of their similarity. On the left, a beautiful rose window, that one in York Minster Cathedral, representing the spiritual worldview. On the right, an unusual picture of DNA, not looking at it from the side, which you're probably used to, but looking down the long axis of the wonderful, marvelous double helix, which is the information of molecule of all living things. The similarities are thought-provoking. I put this in front of you, though, to say that I'm deeply concerned that we seem to be on a path where shrill voices that are occupying the microphones and filling up the bookshelves are claiming that you have to make a choice between these two worldviews. I was not raised in a home where faith was practiced. My parents did not denigrate faith, but they didn't consider it very important. I became an agnostic in college and an atheist in graduate school, where I was studying quantum mechanics. And then I went to medical school, and sitting at the bedside of good people who were facing the end of their lives from diseases that we in the medical profession really couldn't do much about, I was marveled at the way in which their faith seemed to give them strength in a way that I couldn't imagine having. And one afternoon, one of my patients turned to me after sharing her faith with me and said, "Doctor, you haven't said anything. What do you believe?" That simple question changed my life, because I realized I didn't really know the answer. I'd never really looked at the evidence. I realized there were people around me who seemed to be pretty intelligent, who said they were believers, and I assumed that was because they had adopted some worldview in childhood and not been able to step away from it, not that it actually would have any foundation. But I figured I'd better find out. And in the process, over a couple of years, and much influenced by the writings of C.S. Lewis, I ultimately became a Christian. The evidence, actually, some of it comes from nature, and this is something we should not be shy to point out to skeptics. There is something instead of nothing. There's no reason that should be the case. That's a starting point. Why does mathematics work to describe the way in which matter and energy behave? There's no reason that should be true. Why is the gravitational law a simple inverse square? Seems like there's a mathematician behind this, doesn't there? What about the beginning? The universe had a start point 13.7 billion years ago in this unbelievable flash, and that begs the question, what came before? And science cannot answer that. We cannot look past that particular singularity and say what was there. And unless you want to get into an infinite regress kind of argument, the only possible solution is a creator who is in fact outside of time and outside of space. That sounds like a supernatural God, doesn't it? And then you look around you at the universe and you see that in fact the constants that determine the way that matter and energy behave, the speed of light, the gravitational constants, the strong and weak nuclear forces, if they had a value that was just slightly different than what they happen to have, we would not see a universe that was capable of supporting any kind of complexity, much less the kind of life that we see around us. We live on this incredible knife edge of improbability, and even an atheist has to marvel at that and wonder how that could be so if there was not a design behind this. So here we are again. Need there be a conflict between these worldviews? I've tried to argue not. You see, God has given us two books to learn from, to learn about God's truth, to learn about God's awesome majesty, the book of the Bible and the book of nature. For me, that means you can find God in the laboratory as well as in the cathedral. That means that I can read about God in the genome as well about God in the scriptures. And God can hardly be threatened by the efforts of our puny minds to understand creation. That first and greatest commandment, when Jesus spoke it, is recorded in Luke. You're to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength. Go back to Deuteronomy. Heart, soul, strength are there. Jesus added mind. He wants us to love the Lord with our minds. Is it not then part of our mandate to go out and explore God's creation in all of its awesomeness and see this as an opportunity for worship? God's creation is awesome. It's majestic, it's intricate, it's beautiful. And it cannot be at war with itself. Truth cannot contradict truth. Only we humans can start these battles between these two kinds of truth that God has given us, and only we can end them.
Reason and a respect for evidence are the source of our progress, our safeguard against fundamentalists and those who profit from obscuring the truth. We live in dangerous times when superstition is gaining ground and rational science is under attack.
How dinosaurs evolved into birds, as seen in creatures like Archaeopteryx, which has a long tail and teeth like a dinosaur, but feathers just like a modern bird.
We would suggest that Nova check with Dr. Alan Fiducia, who is a paleoornithologist specializing in the origins and phylogeny of birds. He seems to have a conflicting view of what Nova said here.
Paleontologists have tried to turn Archaeopteryx into an earthbound feathered dinosaur, but it's not. It is a bird, a perching bird, and no amount of paleobabble is going to change that.
And in a work entitled Accommodating the Cladogram, which appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Dr. Fiducia wrote the following.
Despite the popularity of the dinosaurian origin of birds, many ornithologists and physiologists in particular have tremendous difficulty with the theory. Because of a huge and growing body of contrary evidence, and the fact that a ground-up origin of avian flight is considered a near biophysical impossibility. Aside from criticism concerning the cursorial origin of avian flight, there are problems related to the geological, temporal occurrence of putative dinosaurian ancestors, which occurs some 30 to 80 million years after the appearance of the earliest known bird. And these forms become more and more superficially bird-like as one approaches the latest Cretaceous. There is also the fact that virtually all of the anatomical features used to ally birds and dinosaurs have been disputed.
The United States has the worst educational system known to science. Our graduates compete regularly at the level of third world countries. So how come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? If we're producing a generation of dummies, if the stupid index of America keeps rising every year, just watch network television and reality shows, right? How come the scientific establishment of the United States doesn't collapse? Let me tell you something. Some of you may not know this. America has a secret weapon. That secret weapon is the H-1B. Without the H-1B, the scientific establishment of this country would collapse. Forget about Google. Forget about Silicon Valley. There would be no Silicon Valley without the H-1B. And you know what the H-1B is? It's the genius visa, okay? You realize that in the United States, 50% of all PhD candidates are foreign-born. At my system, one of the biggest in the United States, 100% of the PhD candidates are foreign-born. The United States is a magnet sucking up all the brains of the world, but now the brains are going back. Right. They're going back to China. They're going back to India. And people are saying, oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in India now. Oh my God, there's a Silicon Valley in China. Duh!
300 years ago, in the Age of Enlightenment, scientists and philosophers, from Galileo to David Hume, had the courage to stand up for intellectual principles and reason. The rational science they pioneered has given us tangible benefits.
treasure. Oh, how it thrills my spirit through and through. Oh, precious name, beyond degree or measure. Oh, wondrous name of Him so kind and true. That name still lives and will live on forever, while kings and kingdoms will forgotten be. Through mist or rain 'twill be beclouded never. That name shall shine and shine eternally. My heart is stirred whene'er I think of Jesus, that blessed name which sets the captives free. The only name for which I find salvation, no name on earth has meant so much to me. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms will all pass away, but there's something about that name. No name on earth has meant so much to me.